We're now going to be talking about section 3 of chapter 5 on tissue organization, specifically referring to muscle tissue and movement from the McKinley text in Anatomy and Physiology at Concordia. And with muscle tissue, actually one slide right before this, you should first be able to describe the structure of skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle after this section. Compare the functions of each type of muscle and where each type is found. With muscle tissue, cells contract when stimulated. Contraction causes movement, right? Movement of our joints specifically, or movement in some capacity that creates a shortening of muscle fibers. And the voluntary motion of body parts includes contraction of heart and propulsion of material through digestive and urinary tracts. And three types, I should say, we're talking about movement. That's what I was referring to with the shortening, creating joint action. With skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle not going to operate the same way. Although there is shortening, it's not voluntary and it's not going to move your joints. Same with smooth muscle, it's more towards internal organs. We'll come back to that in a moment as well. With skeletal muscle tissue, it's either striated or voluntary muscle tissue, meaning you have voluntary control, right? It moves the skeleton. There are long cylindrical cells, called skeletal muscle fibers. They're arranged in parallel bundles that run the length of the entire muscle. Okay? They're multinucleated. They're alternating light and dark bands. They're striations, and they don't contract unless they're stimulated by somatic nervous system, the voluntary. Okay, so you can see this muscle fiber here. We can see here that picture here showing you the nucleus right there, and the striations, some people say, which are basically perpendicular to the length of the fiber itself, and of course the skeletal fiber itself, showing there. Okay. Long cylindrical fibers arranged in parallel, and they're unbranched. Fibers are multinucleated with visible striations, and it's under voluntary control. It moves the skeleton, thermoregulation of your body, okay? And typically talking about muscle attaching to a tendon, the tendon attaching to the bone, okay? Sometimes the skin, but typically speaking, not so much in terms of, except for facial muscles. For voluntary muscles, your movement of the body would not be that case, but some muscles, yes, like your jaw muscles, whatnot. That said, and also, of course, the urethral and the sphincter as well, external urethral area and the sphincter. And as far as cardiac muscle goes, it's confined to the middle layer of the heart wall, the myocardium, responsible for heart contraction to pump blood, right? The primary job of the heart is to pump blood, right? As we'll talk more about the heart later on, it's not that you want it to pump, you want to pump more blood, you don't want to pump harder. Just like you want to be able to produce more force from a muscle standpoint, but you don't have to work harder to do it necessarily. That said, we'll come back to those concepts in later units. Visible striations, their cells are short and often bifurcating. There are one or two nuclei. The cells are connected by something called intercalated discs, which is how the electrical signal travels along gap junctions between these intercalated discs for communication and telling the heart what to do, right? The strengthening connection between the cells, is what the way that those intercalated discs do, and as well as promote rapid conduction of electrical activity. It's involuntary. As much as we might be able to control our stress levels or something along those lines to have some effect upon the heart, we really can't make it go, right? It's involuntary. And the pacemaker cells initiate the contraction. So with the cardiac muscle tissue, we can see here the nucleus. Give you a picture there. Intercalated discs, again, parallel to each other, but separating in cardiac muscle here, and cardiac muscle cell itself, which is more branched, right? They're medium-sized, typically branching cells, contain one or two centrally located nuclei, right? And with visible striations or striations, so once again, intercalated discs between the cells, and it's under an involuntary control, and it pumps blood through the heart and the blood vessels. Basically how the blood gets to the body, right? To and from the heart. And of course, the heart wall is called the myocardium. As far as smooth muscle tissue, we're talking about visceral involuntary muscle tissue, visceral like our organs, internal organs. Lacks striations, no striations now. It appears smooth. Cells are spindle-shaped. They're short with one central oval nucleus. They're found on the walls of the intestines, the stomach, the airways, the bladder, the uterus, and the blood vessels, and helps propel movement through these organs specifically. No voluntary control over the muscle. And taking a look here. Smooth muscle, we got our nucleus, and more than one here, multinucleated here, and smooth muscle cells, each cell here. Okay, it's in that spindle-like structure. They're short, they're fusiform in shape, they have one centrally located nucleus in each one of these cells, And cells do not have visible striations. They're under involuntary control. It moves and propels the materials through the internal organs. Yes, I'm repeating myself for purpose of us getting it. The more you repeat it, the better, right? And it controls the size of the lumen. And the location is the walls of the hollow internal organs, the intestines, the stomach, the airways, urinary bladder, uterus, and the blood vessels, or the iris of the eye as well. So what did you learn? You should be able to compare and contrast the structure of the skeletal and cardiac muscle tissue, let alone the smooth muscle. Now for section 5.4, for nervous system. Describe the structure of nervous tissue, list the functions of nervous tissue. With nervous tissue, it's located in the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. Cells are called neurons. They receive, they transmit, and they process nerve impulses. The larger number of glial cells, there is a larger number of glial cells than there is neurons. They don't transmit nerve impulses. Instead, they're responsible for protection, nourishment, and support of neurons. Two main types that we're looking at for nervous tissue is neuron and glial. The parts of the neuron, the cell body houses the nucleus and other organelles. Nerve cell processes extend from the cell body. We'll show an image in a moment here. The shorter, more numerous processes are called the dendrites. They receive incoming signals and transmit information. And the axon is a single long process extending from the cell body. It carries outgoing signals to other cells. Okay? So the dendrites receive and axon sends out. And neurons are the longest cells in the body. So we can see here our cell body of our neuron, our dendrites, which are receiving the information getting sent out along this axon, this nucleus of glial cell also here with attachment or connection, I should say, to the neurons here, more than one glial cell. We'll come back to glial cells in a moment. So those neurons, the cell body, the dendrites, and the axon, they also contain some glial cells. Of course, that said, the neurons receive, process, and transmit nerve impulses, but the glial cells help protect, nourish, and support the neurons. Okay? And of course, you're going to find these neurons, the brain, spinal cord, and nerves, specifically anything that needs to be activated by the central nervous system out to the peripheral nervous system. So what's the difference between a neuron and a glial cell? That's something you should be able to answer, as we just covered it. We'll come back to section 5.5 in just a moment.